That night the moon was full, casting a pale glow over the compound. I could not sleep, so I went to the kitchen, thinking I would steal a small piece of meat from my mother's pot. She was very strict about food, always warning us never to open the pot at night. But hunger was stronger than fear, and I tiptoed to the firewood stand. The pot was still warm, and steam rose from the cover. My heart beat fast as I lifted the lid carefully. What I saw made my whole body freeze. Inside the soup floated a dark, shriveled human hand. The fingers were bent, the nails still visible, and the skin was pale as if cooked. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My legs shook, and I nearly dropped the lid. I stood there staring, my chest rising and falling like a drum. I could not believe my eyes. Then the kitchen door creaked open. My mother walked in. She was holding a lantern, and the light shone on her face. The moment she saw me staring into the pot, her eyes turned red, glowing like burning charcoal. "Why did you open the pot?" she shouted, her voice deep and strange. I staggered back, knocking over a stool. My lips trembled. "Mummy, what is this? Whose hand is this?" She rushed to me and held my shoulders so tightly I could not breathe. Her breath was hot on my face as she whispered, "If you tell anyone, you will die before morning." My heart stopped. Tears rolled down my cheeks. The woman I called mother now looked like a stranger. I pushed her hands away and ran into my room, slamming the door. That night I sat on my bed, shaking like a leaf in the wind. I cried until my pillow was wet. My heart pounded with fear, and one question refused to leave my mind. Who really was my mother? I could not sleep a single minute. The words my mother whispered echoed in my ears. "If you tell anyone, you will die before morning." My body was weak, but fear kept me awake. When dawn finally broke, I heard the sound of pots clanging in the kitchen. I gathered strength and stepped out, expecting to see a monster instead of my mother. To my surprise, she was there as usual, humming a song while preparing breakfast. "Good morning, my child," she greeted with a soft smile, placing bread and tea on the table. I stared at her in disbelief. How could she look so normal after what I saw last night? The same hands that stirred human flesh were now serving me food. My stomach turned. I pushed the plate away. "You are not eating?" she asked, raising her eyebrows. "I'm not hungry," I muttered. She smiled again, but this time it was strange, almost mocking. I felt her eyes piercing through me, as though she could hear the storm raging inside me. My hands trembled as I stood up and rushed outside. The sun was rising over the village, but my world was sinking into darkness. I walked aimlessly, trying to convince myself it was all a dream, yet the image of that human hand would not leave my mind. When I returned home later, I met her sitting calmly in the living room, weaving baskets like every other day. Nobody in the village would believe she could hide such evil behind that gentle face. I knew then that I could not keep this secret alone. I needed someone to believe me, someone who could help. And so I decided to go to the only person I trusted, my uncle. My uncle Chika was my mother's younger brother. He lived a few compounds away, and everyone respected him for his wisdom. With shaky steps, I ran to his house, my chest heaving with fear and confusion. When he saw me, he frowned. "What happened to you? You look like you've seen a ghost." I sat down, tears rolling down my face. I told him everything, from sneaking into the kitchen to seeing the human hand, to my mother's red eyes and her deadly warning. My words poured out like rain, and I begged him to believe me. At first, he laughed nervously. "My child, are you sure you didn't imagine it? Maybe it was just goat meat that looked strange in the light." "No, Uncle," I cried. "I know what I saw." It was a human hand, with fingers and nails. "Please, you must believe me." He studied my trembling body and pale face. Something in my fear convinced him. Finally, he nodded. "All right, let's go. I want to see this pot for myself." We walked back to the house together. My heart beat so loudly I thought he could hear it. When we entered the kitchen, the pot was still on the firewood stand. With shaking hands, I lifted the lid again, but the hand was gone. The soup looked normal, just meat and vegetables floating inside. My uncle turned to me, his face dark with anger. Do you want to bring trouble into this family with your lies? How dare you accuse your mother of such a thing? No, uncle, I swear. It was there last night. She must have removed it, I cried desperately. But he was already leaving. His words struck me like a knife. Do not repeat this story again. Some things are better buried. I sank to the ground, my world crashing around me. The only person I trusted now thought I was lying. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay on my bed, eyes wide open, listening to the silence of the compound. Every sound made me jump. The hoot of an owl, the rustling of leaves, the barking of distant dogs. Then I heard it, a soft dragging sound outside, like someone pulling something heavy across the ground. My heart skipped. Carefully, I crept to the window and peeped through the small opening. What I saw chilled me to the bone. My mother was outside, digging a hole in the backyard. The moonlight revealed her face, sweaty, determined, almost savage. Beside her lay a black sack. She struggled with it, pushing it into the hole. The sack moved. I gasped silently. Was it a body? My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. With trembling fingers, I pressed record, capturing every moment. The digging, the sack, the way she covered it with sand and patted it down as though nothing happened. When she finally stood up, she looked around, her eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. I ducked, holding my breath until she went back inside. My body was cold with fear. I looked at the recording. My hands trembled, but I knew what I had was proof. Proof that my mother was hiding something evil. I pressed my pillow to my chest and cried silently. Tomorrow I would show my uncle. Tomorrow he would have no choice but to believe me. But deep down, a voice whispered in my heart, will tomorrow even come for you? The next morning I did not touch breakfast again. My mother's eyes followed me as I left the house, her smile strange and knowing. My legs carried me straight to my uncle's compound. Uncle, please, just what? I said, handing him my phone. He looked at me with irritation but pressed play. As the video rolled, his face changed. His jaw tightened and his eyes widened. He leaned closer to the screen, watching every detail. The sack, the digging, the burying. When the video ended, silence filled the air. My uncle looked pale. Where did you get this? I recorded it last night. She was burying something in the backyard, I whispered, tears filling my eyes. He rubbed his forehead, breathing heavily. This is dangerous. If what you are saying is true, your mother may be involved in something we cannot handle alone. At last, he believed me. Relief washed over me, but fear quickly returned. What do we do, Uncle? Should we go to the police? He hesitated. If we are not careful, she might turn against us. But this cannot be hidden. Tonight, we will go together. We will face this. For the first time in days, I felt a small spark of hope, but it was mixed with fear of what would happen when the truth finally came out. That evening, my uncle came to our compound quietly. Together, we went to the backyard carrying a torchlight. My hands shook as he dug into the exact spot where I had seen my mother bury the sack. The soil was still fresh. With every scoop of sand, my heart pounded louder. Finally, the torchlight revealed something white sticking out from the earth. My uncle froze. It was a bone, human bone. He dropped the shovel, his face pale. This is real. We dug further and uncovered more bones. Long bones, small ones, even a skull. The sight was enough to turn my stomach. I fell to my knees, crying uncontrollably. My uncle grabbed my hand. We must leave now. We need the police. This is beyond us. Suddenly, we heard footsteps behind us. We turned and there she was, my mother standing with a machete in her hand. Her eyes glowed red again, and her voice was sharp like a blade. So, you could not keep your mouth shut, she hissed. Now both of you will join them. Fear gripped me like cold chains. My uncle stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. Sister, put down that weapon. Don't do this. But her laugh was terrifying. You don't know who I am, Chike. You never knew. The night suddenly felt darker, and I realized this was not just about bones in the ground. This was about survival. The machete gleamed in the moonlight as my mother stepped closer. My uncle and I moved back slowly, our breaths heavy. My legs were weak, but fear pushed me forward. Then, in a quick motion, my uncle grabbed a stone from the ground and threw it. It struck her shoulder and she stumbled. "Run!" he shouted. We ran through the backyard, crashing into bushes, my heart racing faster than my feet. Behind us, I heard her scream, a sound so sharp it pierced my ears. She chased us, but the darkness of the bush swallowed us as we fled toward the village square. When we reached the road, my uncle flagged down two men who were returning from the night market. Panting, he explained everything quickly. At first, they thought he was drunk, but when they saw the terror in our eyes, they agreed to follow us back. By the time we returned, the backyard was empty. The bones were still there, but my mother was gone. One of the men spat on the ground. "This is abomination. We must call the police immediately." That night, the village buzzed with whispers as word spread. People gathered, some refusing to believe, others too afraid to speak. I sat by my uncle's side shivering, wondering where my mother had gone and what she would do next. I had always known her as a loving woman, but now I saw her as a predator. And predators don't stop until they are caught or killed. By morning, policemen had surrounded our compound, their boots stamped heavily as they dug up the backyard. Villagers gathered outside the gate, murmuring in disbelief. The officers pulled out sack after sack, bones, skulls, pieces of clothing, items belonging to people I had never seen. Some villagers recognized missing relatives in the clothing. Wails of sorrow filled the air as old wounds were reopened. My uncle stood beside me, holding my shoulder tightly. His face was hard, his lips pressed tightly together. "This is evil beyond imagination," he muttered. I stared at the ground, unable to stop my tears. Each bone they uncovered felt like a knife cutting deeper into my heart. Was this really my mother? Just then, two officers dragged her into the compound. They had caught her trying to flee the village. She struggled and cursed, her eyes wild. When she saw me, she spat on the ground and screamed, "You betrayed me! You are no child of mine!" Her words pierced me like fire. My knees gave way and I wept bitterly. The woman I once loved, the one who carried me in her womb, now looked at me with pure hatred. The police ignored her cries as they cuffed her and led her toward the van. The villagers shouted, some in anger, others in fear. Nobody could believe such wickedness had lived among us all these years. My uncle hugged me tightly. "You did the right thing. You saved lives, even if it cost you a mother." But his words could not stop the storm inside me. I felt empty, broken, and lost. The news spread like wildfire. Journalists came from nearby towns. My mother's face was in the newspapers, labeled as a murderer. The trial was held in the city, and my uncle and I had to attend. In court, witnesses gave their testimonies. Families of the missing cried as the bones were presented as evidence. The video I recorded was played before the judge, and the room fell silent. When it was her turn to speak, my mother shocked everyone. She confessed openly, saying the spirits demanded sacrifices, that the pot was her covenant, and that the power she gained fed our family's wealth. People gasped. Some even fled the courtroom. My uncle squeezed my hand, whispering, "Do not listen. Evil always lies," but I could not ignore her words. Was our comfort all these years built on innocent blood? My heart sank. The judge's gavel finally came down. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. As they led her away, she turned and looked at me with eyes full of rage. "This is not the end," she hissed. "Blood follows blood." Her voice echoed in my head long after she was gone. The trial ended, but the scars remained. Our compound became a place of fear. People avoided me, whispering behind my back. To them, I was the child of a murderer. At night, I still dreamt of the pot, the hand, and my mother's red eyes. I woke up sweating, gasping for air, my heart beating like a drum. But slowly, with my uncle's support, I began to heal. He reminded me every day that I had done the right thing, that silence would have meant more deaths. One evening, as the sun set over the village, I stood by the backyard where the bones had been dug out. The ground was bare now, but I still felt the weight of what had been hidden there. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I am sorry." Tears flowed, but for the first time, they were not only tears of pain, they were tears of release. I had lost a mother, yes, but I had saved my soul. And as the wind blew gently across my face, I knew one thing for certain. The truth, no matter how dark, will always rise from the ground. This story reminds us that evil often hides in the most unexpected places, even within those we love and trust the most. The truth may be painful, but silence in the face of wrong only gives darkness more power. By speaking out, even when nobody believed him, the child saved not only himself, but also many others. The lesson here is clear. Never ignore your instincts and never protect evil out of fear. Sometimes the greatest act of love for yourself and others is the courage to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Family is precious, but when family becomes the source of danger, we must choose what is right over what is comfortable. In the end, truth will always rise, just as bones cannot stay buried forever. If you enjoyed this chilling African tale filled with mystery, suspense, and deep lessons, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Magical African Tales for more powerful and unforgettable stories.